girls rode their bikes to the park and vanished. This was the start of something really difficult to believe. This story has the makings of an unbelievable detective thriller from the first. It got more and more confusing as it went on, until all the puzzles came together to form a single answer. On September 25th, 1996, Laura Hobbs was born in Texas. Her parents later gave birth to 3 sons, but they divorced shortly after. Laura's mother relocated to the little Illinois town of Zion with the kids. Laura cherished this location. There, she immediately made new acquaintances and lived with her maternal grandparents. Furthermore, she loved visiting Zion with her family because it was situated on the edge of Lake Michigan. When Laura was 8 years old in the spring of 2005, her father made the decision to make amends with his spouse and reintegrate into the lives of the kids. He moved to live with the family from Texas. Mother's Day was Sunday, May 8th. Laura celebrated the occasion by flying kites at the lake with her brothers and dad. After their fantastic time together, Laura requested to take her best friend, 9-year-old Crystal, for a stroll. The girls lived close to one another and went to the same school. They became fast friends once Laura moved to Zion and hung together virtually every free moment. They rode bikes, went to each other's houses, and played outside. Crystal would occasionally come to Laura's window, and they would converse when Laura's mother forbade her from going outside. They made the decision to head to the park, which was a short distance from their houses, on their bikes on that particular day. They frequently visited because of the park's close proximity and extensive biking trail. Because both girls knew the area well and significant crimes were unusual in the town, parents were willing to let their daughters go there, despite their age. Around 3:30 p.m., the girls departed and were expected to return for dinner. But as time went on, their parents became concerned. They decided to go to the park and call Laura and Crystal home when it was 7 p.m, and they still hadn't returned. The adults were shocked to learn that the girls had disappeared. They called their names as they strolled down the bike path, but they got no response. The family's friends and other relatives swiftly joined the search. In an attempt to locate them, they combed the park once more and strolled through their neighborhood streets. This continued for a few hours until nightfall arrived. The parents decided to call the police when, by 9 p.m, they had become aware that anything might have occurred to their girls. The cops got involved in the search right away. They made contact with volunteer groups and recruited search dogs in addition to several dozen people. Locals who learned about the children's disappearance also contributed to the search effort. Since the girls were expected to go to the park, the police concentrated their efforts there. The police discovered that Laura and Crystal did, in fact, pass by them, stop to talk, and remark that they were going to the park after speaking with other kids who lived along the route from their homes to the park. In addition to their search, the police canvassed the neighborhood, going door to door in an attempt to locate anyone who might have seen the girls that evening. They also started handing out leaflets with details on their whereabouts. It was becoming more and more clear by the hour that the girls had suffered a tremendous loss. Even though Laura and Crystal were being looked for all around the town, and it was already dark outside, they were nowhere to be found. The cops decided to take a break at 4:30, having nearly searched until daylight. But Laura's grandfather and father persisted in searching the area instead of going back home. After arriving at the park, they divided up to cover more territory. Laura's grandfather heard a cry at around 6 in the morning as the first rays of daylight started to appear. He immediately raced in that way. He came upon Laura's father, who was in disbelief and declared that he had discovered Laura and Crystal's bodies. They were hidden under dense foliage off the bike path. The amount of blood and bruises on the girls led Laura's father to conclude right once that they were both dead. The police were dispatched by the man, and they showed up quickly. Upon forensic examination, the experts concluded that the girls died from numerous stab wounds, most likely caused by a knife. Laura had 20 of these injuries on her body, and Crystal only had 11. The small village was shocked to hear this news. There, such crimes were virtually unheard of, but suddenly they had to confront the terrifying fact that 2 young girls had been slaughtered by an unidentified perpetrator a mere few hundred meters from their houses. The cops put all of their energy into identifying the offender. At first, they suspected Jerry, Laura's father. The fact that he had located the dead by himself after police and volunteers had previously combed the park alarmed them. After doing more research, they learned that Jerry had a lengthy criminal past that included assaults on persons and drug-related charges from his early years. His wife and kids had to relocate to a different state in 2001 due to an event. Jerry and his wife were still living in Texas on that day when they got into a furious dispute that quickly got out of hand. 3 men who were walking by saw that they were in front of their house and decided to step in since they believed the woman was in danger. Enraged, Jerry proceeded to fetch his chainsaw and began after those dudes. They eventually succeeded in taking him down and holding him there until the cops could come. Jerry was charged and given a 10-year probationary term 1 year later. He had to visit his probation officer on a regular basis as part of his probation, but he skipped one of those visits. His probation was thus overturned, and he received an 18-month prison sentence. Just a few weeks before his daughter and her companion passed away tragically, he had been released from prison, and he had arrived in Zion nearly immediately. It was evident to the police that Jerry had a tendency towards certain behaviours. Nevertheless, they lacked any proof or reason, so they invited him to be questioned. He accepted to come to the police station, and detectives started to probe him more and more about his involvement. Jerry first denied any role in his daughter's and her friend's deaths throughout more than 20 hours of interrogation. He said that he was unrelated to it and that he and his spouse had seen Laura had not come back. So he set out to find. He claimed to have kept looking till he came across the girls' park. Later on, though, Jerry began abruptly altering his account. Eventually, he started confessing as a result of the detective's constant pressure. He claimed that he had actually gone seeking for his daughter that evening and had seen her with Crystal in the park. He chastised her for leaving the house without permission and insisted that she accompany him. When she refused, he grabbed her arm and tried to drag her inside. She refused and insisted that he leave the girl alone, as did her companion Crystal. Jerry claims that Crystal pulled a tiny knife out of her pocket and aimed it at him. This gave Jerry a fit. He grabbed the knife, stabbed both females many times, left their bodies in the overgrown area of the park, and turned away. He supposedly discovered the girls later in the morning and told the police about it himself to allay their suspicions. Jerry signed his admitting statement and repeated it on camera while crying during this confession.
I was walking on a dirt trail and I ran into Laura and her friends Crystal on the trail. I told Laura that she had to come home and she argued with me and I grabbed her by the arm. She tried pulling away and was telling me to let her go. Crystal also told me to let Laura go. Crystal pulled out a small knife from her pocket and again told me to let Laura go. Laura was fighting me and I punched her in the face and she dropped to the ground.
This change in events surprised the girls' relatives. Laura's father turned revealed to be the murderer, something none of them could have predicted. But given his history of illegal activity, his wife eventually admitted to the police that she had always been aware of her husband's violent tendencies. Still, the individual confessed to the crime, was taken into custody, and is currently awaiting trial in jail. The prosecutor soon said that he would pursue the death penalty. While the trial preparations were taking place, numerous interesting developments in the case happened. After Jerry was given legal representation, he abruptly declared that he was not involved in these killings. He claimed that after more than 20 hours of questioning by authorities, he finally confessed under tremendous pressure. In addition, he claimed that they had physically abused him and threatened him and his family. He was in a very distressed state at that moment, having not slept for more than 2 days due to his inability to deal with the sadness he felt after discovering his daughter had been slain. The cops started telling him that they would free him and let him rest if he just admitted to the killings. For him, they had pretty much worked out the most likely scenario, and Jerry had just repeated what they had said. After assembling a logical storyline, the police had him sign a document containing this confession and had him read the text aloud on camera. His lawyer asked for a case review right away, but it was quickly turned down. Jerry had freely confessed, according to the prosecution, and had verified his admission on tape. Even so, he had to wait for several years because he had to go through a formal jury trial after withdrawing his confession. After that, Jerry's attorney found out some important information. At first, he chose to concentrate on looking for any clues as he was aware that there was not a single solid piece of evidence against his client. Here, he discovered that the girls' bodies had not even been given a complete examination by the medical examiners. All the usual protocols had been followed, including taking samples and gathering detritus from under the girls' fingernails, among other things. but nobody had thought to examine the sample's contents after putting them in the fridge. The attorney asked for an independent laboratory to review each of these pieces of evidence. Despite the prosecution's attempts to hinder him, he was able to complete his assignment. When the exams were eventually carried out in 2008, there was a surprising turn of events. It was discovered that many DNA samples were present on Laura's body. Under her fingernails, there was foreign skin, and male sperm was discovered on her clothing and in 3 different locations on her body. A quick study showed that Laura's father had no ownership of any of this. Everything suggested a very different man. This finding proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Laura had experienced sexual assault. What about Crystal? No one questioned that she was slain by the same person, even though they could not detect any foreign DNA on her body. Jerry's attorney asked for his client's release from jail and the dropping of all charges right now. But here, too, was an unpleasant surprise in store for him. The district prosecutor insisted that the new evidence was meaningless and refused to accept it. He thought it possible that the foreign DNA Laura's body contained was purely accidental. He maintained that young couples had frequent sexual encounters in that park, which is how he thought male semen, possibly from the bushes or grass, landed on the girl's body. He didn't seem to be fazed even by the discovery of biological material within the victim's body. Jerry was still incarcerated and awaiting his trial to begin, in spite of the ridiculousness of this version. Though the attorney was able to get the DNA sample into the FBI database, no matches were found. There was no hope for rationality on the part of the prosecution in Jerry's case, so all he could do was wait and hope that the criminal would be apprehended sooner rather than later. Let us go ahead 4 years and thousands of miles from Zion. Amanda Snell, a 20-year-old recent military recruit, resided on the Arlington, Virginia military base. Given the large number of military members in her family, she made the decision to enlist. She occasionally assisted a nearby church in addition to her duty. She worked with kids who had autism and other developmental disabilities there. Amanda made the decision early on that she wanted to pursue this professionally, and she intended to complete the required coursework following her time in the military. Her absence from duty on July 13, 2009, sparked immediate worries among her fellow military members. After going to her room, they knocked on the door but got no answer. They found the door open and proceeded inside. Amanda's possessions were beautifully arranged, the bed was made, and the room was immaculately clean, but she was nowhere to be seen. It was only after they unlocked the closet that they saw what was horrific. Amanda's body lay in an odd position, with her head covered by a pillowcase. After initially being unable to identify Amanda's cause of death, the medical examiners came to the conclusion that she had suffocated to death. Her body wasn't found for more than a day after she passed away. Her body showed no indications of trauma, and she had not experienced any sexual assault. Only the fact that her tablet and laptop were stolen from her room was discovered by investigators. In talking to Amanda's parents, the investigators discovered a fascinating piece of information. She had excruciating migraines, and occasionally she would hide in a dark room with a pillowcase over her head until the pain was too much for her. Detectives surmised that Amanda may have had a horrific accident because she was discovered in her own closet with a pillowcase over her head. Still, they took their time ruling out the murder theory. They discovered a men's shoe trail in front of her wardrobe, but they were unable to identify who owned it. As a result, the inquiry was not closed, and detectives kept looking for a possible murderer. A 26-year-old Arlingtonian woman left the metro station in February 2010 and made her way to her boyfriend's house. She was approached by an unidentified man in the middle of the street, who pulled out a revolver and told her to get in his car. The attacker grabbed her arm and threatened to stab her, but the woman was able to escape. With her purse in hand, she ran in the direction of her boyfriend's residence. He and his pals ran into the street and dialed 911 when they heard her cries. When they arrived, the attacker had already left. Still, the woman could provide a thorough account of his appearance. Her memory also included the type of vehicle he drove, a beige Dodge Durango. The police started their search after creating a composite sketch of the culprit based on the victim's description. 2 weeks later, on February 27th, 2 Arlington women were on their way home following an evening out with friends. An unidentified man with a gun came up behind them while they were standing at their doorstep and demanded their wallets. The attacker forced the women into the residence and shackled their hands when they told him they had no money. One of the women was able to release her hands as he exited the room. Reaching for a phone, she dialed 911. But the man came back quickly, grabbed the phone and threw it against the wall. Then he picked up one of the women, led her outside to his car, and he drove off. After driving a while, he sexually assaulted her, wrapped duct tape around her head, and used a scarf to choke her until she passed out. Later, when she was discovered by onlookers in the snow by the side of the road, she recovered consciousness. After being brought to the hospital, the cops showed up right away. The woman gave them the attacker's description and specified the make and model of his vehicle, a beige Dodge Durango. Amazingly, another woman had called the police just 2 hours prior to this attack. She informed them that she had been accosted on the street by a man who fit the same description and was driving a similar kind of vehicle. She had managed to get away after he had tried to force her into his car by stunning him. It became apparent to the investigators that they were up against a dangerous and prolific criminal right in their own backyard. Since it was simpler to track down through databases, they concentrated their efforts on the automobile. All owners of such cars were contacted by the authorities, and they soon struck it lucky. They found her earring and her student ID, which belonged to the same woman who had been abandoned to perish in the snow, as they were inspecting one of these cars. They also discovered a stun gun and the same kind of tape that was used to wrap her head inside the automobile. The driver of the vehicle was identified as Jorge Avila Torres, a 21-year-old who was stationed at the military installation where Amanda Snell's corpse had been discovered a few months prior, and he was just a few floors down in the same building as her. Investigators discovered a pistol and a large amount of ammo in his room, which he had bought less than a month prior. They found a large number of graphic films showing cruelty and violence on his computer. These videos included unconscious women in some of them. The 3 women who had been attacked were shown images of Torres as well as images of other men. They could all agree who he was. He didn't even try to hide his face during the attacks, which is why they recalled it so clearly. After that, Torres was taken into custody until his trial and arrested. He was extradited to Illinois right away, when the trial for Laura and Crystal's murders got underway. At first, he denied any wrongdoing, and his attorney attempted to counter that the victim's semen sample was insufficient to establish his client's guilt. Eventually, though, Torres received an offer. He was already going to get the death penalty, and he would never be free even if it were postponed for decades, as is sometimes the case. Because he believed his life was in danger at his current facility, the criminal agreed to confess to the murders in exchange for an extra 100 years behind bars and a transfer to a new facility. It was sufficient for him to acknowledge the killings. The conditions of the agreement did not require him to divulge all the information. Because of this, Torres is still detained and awaiting his upcoming death. None of the police officers that forced Jerry to sign a fraudulent confession were held accountable. Jerry was unable to lead a completely regular life again. He started abusing drugs, was caught for resisting arrest, managed to get out of jail, and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. He got to live in Texas because he was unable to reconcile with his family. In an interview following his release, he acknowledged that the forced confession had permanently ruined his life. He responded, "I found my daughter dead. They didn't even need to try to break me. I was already broken," when asked why he had accepted the confession. Lastly, it's important to note that the public and national media did offer the local police and the county prosecutor's office some well-earned criticism. They could have caught the perpetrator far sooner if they had carried out a thorough investigation rather than becoming obsessed with only one suspect. Rather, they unintentionally gave him permission to attack 3 more women and kill 1. These are the only examples that we are aware of. Okay folks, I appreciate you watching. Please comment on this story if you liked my video, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.